Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I really hope you're all doing okay and having a great day and an amazing week. My name is Effie and today we're doing a video that's a little bit different for me. It's a bit fun, it's a bit of a joke. It's not really a joke. I mean, I'm doing half my face how I do my makeup now and the other half how I did my makeup in the past. And in the past we're talking around my second year of uni when I started to get into makeup a little bit more, but I wasn't great at it. I didn't really know what I liked, so yeah, that's where we're looking at. I will say I don't have the exact products that I used to use, and because of that I'm going into this with the mindset of if Effie from 5 years ago came and found my collection of makeup, which products would she most likely pick and use? But other than that, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. I put up 2 videos a week and it's all makeup content, so if that sounds like your type of thing, then this is the place for you. But other than that, I will let you enjoy the video. So zoomed you in a little bit and we're going to start with our base today. This side of my face is going to be the products I like to use now. This side of my face is going to be Effie from 5 years ago. And Effie from 5 years ago would have gone for a mattifying primer. This is the MUA Pro Base Mattifying Flawless Primer. This isn't the exact one I used to use. I used to use one of those silicone gel type formulas, you know, the ones that were clear and sort of made your fingers feel weird. I actually don't own any of those anymore, but I definitely would have chose a mattifying primer back then. As for today, my skin has sort of got a lot more dry, particularly right now I'm having big issues with dry patches, so I tend to reach for a hydrating primer. This is the Collection Primed and Ready Hydrating Primer infused with Advanced Moisture Complex. I just reach for hydrating ones more now, and I never would have picked up a hydrating one before. And the same logic is kind of applied to my foundations. Back in the day, this used to be my go-to foundation. I also used to have the L'Oreal Infallible foundation, but this is the Maybelline Superstay 24-hour foundation. This isn't the new version, this is the old version. But I used to go high coverage, matte, block out all colour on my face sort of situation, and this is a really good option for that. I do still use this now, I just use it in much lower quantities than I used to do. I do still really enjoy this foundation, I just reach for it a little bit less now. As you can see, back when I used to do my makeup, I did used to go over my eyelid with my foundation. I don't do that anymore. And for the current side, I've been reaching for my Collection Lasting Perfection Glow Foundation in the shade Porcelain 2 far more often now. It's just a bit glowier, it's not as matte on my skin, it's helping with the dryness I'm experiencing, so this is what I reach for now. It's probably not quite a complete even split down the centre of my face, but I will say I think the Collection one is slightly lighter than the Maybelline one, so it's probably going to look a bit weird where they join, but they do both look nice. I will say the Maybelline one is accentuating the dry patches on my forehead, but back when I used to use it all the time, I didn't really have dry patches. These dry patches have appeared out of nowhere. I think the difference is that now I've sort of learned I don't always need full coverage. My skin isn't the best, but it's also not terrible, and therefore I don't need to cake it in 1,000 layers of makeup, which is something I've learned. But back then, Effie didn't know that. Maybe she was a little bit more insecure about her skin. In all fairness, my skin was worse back then as well, so I'm not mad at it. On to concealer, and as somebody who grew up in Britain watching YouTube, of course my favourite concealer was the Collection Lasting Perfection Concealer. This is the new version. This is the shade 1 Rose Porcelain, and I will say I don't think I went for something this light. Back when I used to do my makeup with this, I think I used to pick basically my skin tone because I didn't know you could go a shade lighter, and I've just naturally done what I normally do, but let's face it, back in the day, I used to do that. Yeah, I wouldn't use this much now. There we go. As you can tell, the main focus of my makeup back in the day was full coverage. I have no colour left on this side of my face. As for today, I tend to mix it up with concealers, but the main difference is I look for ones that have a thinner formula, ones that are a bit more movable, ones that are a bit more hydrating, and one I am really enjoying right now is the Rimmel the Multitasker Concealer. I tested this a while ago now. I don't know if the video is up before this video or after, I'm not sure, but this has become a really firm favourite. I'm only applying the smallest amount because it spreads out so much. It's also a great shade for me. It's not too light and it's not too pink, whereas the collection side, that is a pink toned concealer, which isn't a bad thing for brightening, but obviously I can't use it really on the rest of my face. This side of my face is so much lighter than this side, and I think mainly it's due to the foundation. Maybe I used to be more tanned than I am now. I doubt it, but maybe. Or maybe I was just worse at picking shades. For powder, and again, back in the day, being young and watching YouTube, the Rimmel Stay Matte powder was my go-to. This is probably the second one I own, and I've hit pan on it, so I'm going to use this. I didn't really know what loose powder was. I didn't know that you could use it, so I just stuck to pressed powder. Yeah, I used to use a lot of powder because for some reason I used to think my skin was oily. It's really not. It never has been. As for nowadays, I love the I Heart Revolution Scented Loose Baking Powder in the shade Peach. This is actually not translucent. The Rimmel one is. I do tend to pick translucent loose setting powders, but for some reason this one isn't translucent but has somehow become, honestly, my favourite powder. I'll be honest, with blush, I never really used to wear it. I didn't wear it before university, and the only reason I started wearing it is because my friend told me I should, and therefore I did. And the only blush I owned was this one, and I owned it for the bronzer. So this is actually a product I did used to use all the time. This is the Revolution Ultra Sculpt and Contour Kit in Ultra Fair CO1. It comes with a bronzer, highlight and blush. So I used to use this bronzer all the time. In fact, this is the second one I've owned because I completely used up all of the bronzer in the first one. The highlighter I never really used. The blush I never really used until I started wearing blush, and it was the only blush I had, so I wore it. And again, I've just naturally gone further up my cheek, but I really wouldn't do that. I would do the whole smile and put it on the apples, which I don't do now at all. Nowadays, I own plenty of blushes, and I actually really enjoy blush now, but I tend to pick matte blushes. This is the MUA Blush Matte Powder in the shade Rose Tea. It's sort of a cooler toned pink. I really like these shades on my skin tone. This is probably the blush I've used the most. It was in my project pan at the start of the year, so that might explain why I've used it so much, but it is definitely one of the blushes I reach for fairly regularly. And the main thing that's changed in my blush application is, first of all, I use a big fluffy brush. This is by the brand BU Beauty, and it is their blush brush, and I take it all over my face pretty much. It starts on my cheek, it goes up onto my temples, it goes on my nose, it goes on my chin, it goes everywhere, and I apply a lot more of it. I just think it makes me look a lot more pulled back instead of here where it's just on my cheek. I feel like this side's just a bit more sculpted a little bit. Even though it's blush, it's not bronzer or contour or anything like that, I do think it does a good job at just freshening my face. And now for bronzer, like I said, this was the go-to product. So this, again, is the Revolution Ultra Sculpt Contour Kit in the shade Ultra Fair CO1, and I would go in with the bronzer. In terms of application, not much has really changed, except I go in with a much lighter hand now. I used to really pile on the bronzer, thinking that it will somehow make me look more tanned, even though I'm very white and the rest of my body was very white. But I did used to use way too much bronzer. And also, I didn't used to put any on my nose. I do now. In terms of what I pick for bronzer nowadays, one of my favourites is the Doll Beauty Gimme Sun in Light. I generally tend to go for bronzers that have a bit more of a yellow tone now. That's just my personal preference. I still use the same application. In fact, I use the exact same brush as I used to use. I'm just dusting it off on my makeup towel. And I'm just a lot lighter handed now. I think now we're really starting to see a difference between the two sides. I think this side, first of all, looks darker, partially because of the foundation, partially because of the amount of bronzer I've got on it, and it's a lot harsher. This side looks a lot softer, a lot less colour on it, but still, there is still colour pulling me up, whereas this side I just feel like it's just on there. Moving on to highlight, and honestly, I use the same product as I used to use, and that is the Soph Revolution Highlighter Palette. I've had this for the longest time, and this has always been my go-to highlighter because it has every shade I'm going to need. However, the difference being, I used to pretty much just stick to these two shades, maybe the pink, whereas now, probably my favourite shades are the pink the gold and the peach. So I don't really go for this white one anymore just because I think it's a touch too stark on me. But that was the one I used to go for, so that's the one I'm going to use on this side. And the brushes, I pretty much haven't changed. I used to use this one, I now use this one. I would say the main difference is that this one is a bit more tapered at the top, this one isn't. But they're both just fluffy brushes and they both do a really good job. And I do still use this one from time to time. And I'm pretty much sticking to just my cheekbone because I didn't used to put highlighter on my forehead or anything like that. I did used to put it on my nose, so I will still put some down my nose. And as for this side of my face, I think I am actually going to go with the pink just because I feel like that is the shade I reach for most frequently at the moment. I tend to do a lot of pink eyeshadow at the moment, and when I want a pink eyeshadow look, I tend to go for a pink highlighter, and this is the one I go for. And the main difference now is that I take a little bit up onto my forehead and I also wrap it round into my eyebrow and things like that. I don't just take it as a straight line across my cheek, but realistically it's all the same. I just put it in different places now. So now let's zoom in a little bit more and we'll talk about eyes. I know a lot of people didn't used to use eye primer. I've always been somebody that used eye primer, especially back when I first started getting into makeup, and the one I used to use is Revolution Prime and Lock because this is actually my second tube of this stuff. I have finished it up once before and I repurchased it, which means I must have absolutely loved it. So let's just pop that on this side. And like I said, I used to put foundation on my eyelids so that would all crease. Would I blend it out? Nope. And I would just blend in my eye primer using my finger. Nowadays, because I don't put anything on my eyelid in terms of foundation or concealer, I do prefer to use a primer that has a bit of a base to it. And the one I've been really enjoying at the moment is the Collection Lasting Perfection Stretch Conceal and Eye Primer. And I do use a brush now. I just go in with a little bit on a brush and blend it into my eyelid. Now for this eye look, I'm sort of aiming for a general day out, so going out for lunch with friends, doing something for the day, you know. It's not a night out look, it's also not a work appropriate / university lecture look, if that makes sense. So sort of like somewhere in between. And the palette I used to use all the time, pretty much because it was the only palette I owned, was the Soph Ultra eyeshadow palette, the original one. I've used this so much that the clasp is actually broken on it, which is a shame, but here it is. I have hit pan on this shade. I did that a couple of weeks ago. It didn't happen back in the day, it happened a couple of weeks ago. And the colours I used to use a lot were obviously this shade, but also the pink, the red, this sort of peachy shade, these shades over here. I've always loved doing colourful eyeshadow. I've just got better at it, I feel, at least. I feel like I've got better at it over time. So yeah, I'm going to just create a quick look using these sorts of shades. In terms of eyeshadow application, I used to apply lightest to darkest, now I apply darkest to lightest, which is probably the biggest change. But I also used to not really deepen my looks too much, and also now I realise that I have kind of hooded eyelids. I have this crease along my eyelid and I adjust for that. I didn't used to. So I'm going to do my eyeshadow how I used to, and hopefully you'll see what I mean. But basically most of the eyeshadow is going to be hidden by my crease anyway, whereas now I know to blow it out big and strong and make a statement. And the first thing I used to do, which I'm convinced we all used to do, which I'm sure many people still do now, I personally just don't like doing it this way, is I would set the eye primer, which I would use a shade like this, very similar to my skin tone. I'd probably also use this one as well, that's why it's probably got a dent in it. I'm going to probably do this silently and speed it up and just sort of point at each shade in the palette, and I'm only going to use two brushes. A fluffy brush and a slightly smaller fluffy brush, because that's all I would have used back in the day. It's going to be a struggle, but let's give it a go. we go. That's pretty much what I used to do. In fact, it reminds me a lot of the first look I posted on Instagram, which is from around the time we're talking about. It's not that I don't like the look, I actually think it's really pretty, nice and soft. I would probably wear this to work or something like that. It's just, for me now, if I were to be going out for dinner or lunch with friends, anything like that, I would do things a bit differently, which I'm going to show you on this eye. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to create a very sort of similar-ish look on this eye, well, sort of the same colour palette, so like pinks with a gold lid. It's just I'm going to do it how I would do it now. And the first big change is I'd probably go in my Beauty Bay Bright Mattes palette. I love this palette, particularly if I'm planning on doing sort of monochromatic looks, because it has all the shades you could need for a monochromatic look. So for this, I'm pretty much going to be sticking to this pink row here. Again, I'll hold up the palette and show you what colours I'm using, but you're going to see the application is very different. I start with darker colours. I'm probably going to make it a lot more pink. This is sort of peachy. I'm going to make it a lot more pink. If I'm doing a pink look, I want a pink look. So yeah, hopefully you'll see what I'm on about. And also you'll see that I account for my crease in my eyelid is another thing. I also don't set my lid anymore. So the first main difference being that I always start eye looks with my eyes open so that I can see where my crease is, and I can bring the darkest colours above my crease so that they are still visible when my eye is open. I then obviously use more than 2 brushes now. I tend to use brushes for more than 1 shade. I think that's fine. It's just I dust them off in between, and I generally try to go fluffier the further out I go on my eye. Also, starting darkest to lightest means that I often have to go back in with my darker shades and re-intensify them. I don't see that as a problem anymore. I feel like I used to, and I used to be scared of having too much pigment all at once. I'm not really scared of that anymore, the biggest issue being fallout, and I am getting a little bit of fallout from these shades, but I will dust that off and it'll be fine. And also nowadays I typically start with my eyes first, so it's much less of a problem. And I tend to go in with a few more shades now. I think on this eye look I've gone in with 5 eyeshadow shades, whereas on the other look I went in with only 3 matte shades. So yeah, I just like to get that blend a bit more, whereas I didn't used to worry too much about it. I feel like you don't need to worry as much if you are starting lightest to darkest. They blend a lot easier by themselves. But when you're starting with the darkest shades, you probably do need to worry about blending a little bit more. And now for shimmer shades. I do a lot of looks where I just use shimmer shades that are in the palette, but one thing I have discovered over the past 5 years that I really enjoy are separate shades. I've just picked a few up that I really enjoy. So one that I love but is unfortunately discontinued is the Beauty Bay Pressed Eye Pigment. This is in the shade Bloom. I wear this all the time. I never wear it on YouTube or on my Instagram looks because you can't get it anymore, but I wear this all the time in my everyday life. Kind of a replacement for that is I picked up a Super Shock Shadow from Colourpop. This is the shade Frog. These are very similar. I've only used this once, so I'm not going to use it today, but I have enjoyed this the time I did use it. I just need to maybe use it a bit more before I consider adding it into like my everyday. So what I'm actually going to use today is one of these. This is the e.l.f. Liquid Glitter Eyeshadow. I have a few of these. This is in shade 24 Carat. This is probably my favourite gold shade, so trying to match the gold on this eye. And what I do with these is I take them off the applicator. I don't use the applicator, I use a brush, and then I just pat it onto my eyelid. So much more intense. And I also take it slightly above my crease because it's going to transfer up there anyway. Might as well put it up there and make it look intentional. For brows, the main thing that has changed is that I shave off the ends of my brows. If you've watched my videos, you've probably heard me say that 1,000 times. I shave my brows up to here. They typically grow down to about here. So on this side, I'm going to be doing my brows how I normally do them, drawing them on a bit straighter. On this side, I'm going to draw them back on down to here. Now what I used to use was a brow pomade. And the one I'm going to use today is the Benefit Ka-Brow, although I didn't used to use Benefit Ka-Brow because Benefit Ka-Brow is expensive. But I'm going to use it because I think this one will work best for drawing on the end of my brow to the point where I need it. I'll be honest, that looks really weird now because I'm just so not used to having brows that long anymore, but that is probably how they used to look, honestly, which is a bit strange for me. And on the now side of my face, as much as I am currently getting back into using brow pomades, I am going to use the products that I would probably reach for the most, which is my Benefit Goof Proof Brow Pencil and my Wet n Wild Brow Obsessive Brow Gel. Maybe this isn't a definite, this is just a tinted brow gel that's currently in my project pan, so I am reaching for it more at the moment, but it's probably not my favourite, but you know, it gives an idea of what I would typically do. I think the brows is where the real difference comes in, because honestly, they just look so different. For mascara, back in the day, the main focus was that it was cheap. I didn't really know what I liked in mascara. I honestly didn't know the difference between a plastic wand or a natural bristle wand. So I pretty much just went for whatever was cheap. This is one that I have in my collection that is from Collection. It's the Long Shot Lengthening Mascara. I feel like this is the sort of thing I would have picked up back in the day. And I actually don't mind this mascara now. It's not my favourite, but it's not terrible. So this is probably something I would have picked up. It is a plastic bristle brush, although I wouldn't have known that and it wouldn't have mattered to me. There we go, that's probably all I would do. I would literally just coat my lashes black and I wouldn't care about how they looked. So long as they were black, that was fine. Didn't really have any preferences when it comes to mascara. Nowadays, I have two firm favourite mascaras and nothing has yet beaten them. This is one of them. It is the Primark False Lash Queen mascara, and the other one is the I Heart Revolution Tasty Avocado mascara, which is weird because this is a natural bristle brush, that's a plastic bristle brush, but I enjoy both of them, and I did not pronounce those words correctly. I'm not going to do any lashes in this video just because back in the day, never used to wear lashes, and nowadays if I was going out just to see friends or anything like that, I wouldn't really wear lashes. I typically only wear lashes for filming or for Instagram. Finally, we're going to quickly do a lip, and this is something that has really changed a lot over the past 5 years. First of all, back in the day, I used to always wear matte lipsticks, and the one I probably used the most was this one. I pretty much only ever wore greys or burnt oranges. I have one grey and one burnt orange and they are both out of date. So no matter what I put on my lip, it's going to be out of date. So I've just gone for this one. They don't even sell this anymore. This is the Revolution. It was in a lip kit. It's the shade Treason. They don't sell this anymore. I still like cooler tone shades and I feel like I would still wear a grey tone. Would I wear it as much as I used to? No. Would I wear it with this sort of look? No, because this is quite a warm look. Basically, I'm a lot more open to different textures and colours when it comes to my lips at the moment. And actually something I never thought I would ever like, but is now probably something I really enjoy, is this. I haven't worn this out the house, I don't think. Maybe I have once. It is the Huda Beauty Demi Matte Liquid Lip in the shade Passionista. So first of all, it's bright pink. I bought this because, first of all, it was in TK Maxx, so it was not full price. I really wanted to try bright pink and I really love the colour on me, and I actually have two more of these in different shades, and I have bought more bright pinks since trying this, so that does show I really enjoy it. Also, the fact it's demi matte, it's not matte, that is something that would have scared me away before. There we go, that is a split half and half then versus now look. Let me know which one you prefer. I'm not going to be offended either way. If you prefer back then, about 5 years ago, this is a typical Effie look from back then, or if you prefer now, this is a more typical look for Effie right now. I understand this side is way more pink and a lot of people maybe don't like pink, and so therefore you might prefer the colours on this side, that's fine. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you have a preference in terms of which side you prefer. Let me know which brow you prefer, because it is so weird seeing my old brows back on my face. I obviously prefer this side of my face, otherwise I would revert back to this side, but actually there's a few things that aren't as bad as I remember them being. I thought that this side of my face was going to be a complete fail, but yeah, I quite like both sides. I actually quite like this lip. Maybe I should look for a grey lip that's not out of date. But yeah, like I said, let me know what you think. I really enjoyed filming this video. I imagine it's going to be a bit of a pain to edit because obviously it's basically like doing two full faces and the description box is going to be filled with the links to all of these products because they will all be linked in the description box below. But that is not a problem for me today. Today, filming was really fun. If you would like me to do more of these half and half looks, please let me know what you would like to see. I'm thinking of doing one that's sort of like day and night, or maybe I could do different like warm and cool tones maybe. Let me know what you think. Let me know which ones you would like to see. I'm happy to do them. This was quite fun, like I said. But if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you like my content, please consider subscribing. I put up 2 videos a week and it's all makeup content, so if that sounds like your type of thing, then this is the place for you. But other than that, I will let you go. Have a great day and an amazing week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.